The world has gained a new nation. The Sudan, for 58 years under the joint rule of Britain and Egypt,
The birth of a nation is often a story of resilience, written with the pen of lightning and with the ink of blood and sweat.
yellow for the desert, green for agriculture.
Indeed, no nation can claim to be without a past of struggle, sacrifice, and pen. But then there's always that other nation and parties that play the role of a midwife.
Saudi thanks Britain and Egypt for giving his country freedom.
In January 1956, Sudan gained her independence from Britain. It had been ruled as part of Egypt, but a referendum before the end of the colonial rule saw Sudan emerge as an independent state, a state that seems to be at peace with war with itself, ever since, driven by divisions. First was the Anyanya Rebellion that lasted between 1955 and 1972. This was between the northern state and southern communities that were protesting slavery and marginalization. But its end was a lull before another storm. This photo of a young child in dire straits was first published in the New York Times on the 26th of March, 1993. The photographer, Kevin Carter, was a South African photojournalist. He was at a place called Ayod in the present-day South Sudan with the United Nations. He was covering the drought that was ravaging local populations amid a deadly war. The girl was reportedly struggling to reach a UN feeding center a few kilometers away when she got overwhelmed. The vulture, being the anti-hero, waited for a windfall. While Kevin reportedly chased away the bird and the child was later rescued. However, in a tragic twist, he would later take his own life after many called out the lack of empathy and ethics from him in the field of journalism. Sudan was in yet another conflict with Khartoum and its southern region at it again. Only that this was a more vicious and convoluted civil war. The war had started 10 years earlier in 1983, this time involving a different rebel force. Members of the Dinka community in the south under the Sudan People's Liberation Army, supported by the then Ethiopian leader Mengistu Haile Mariam. However, there were other issues that contributed to the conflict.
Prior to independence, Sudan was co-managed by Britain and Egypt. All right? And the key dominant philosophy and ideology was that in Khartoum, the people around did exercise and pursue and follow the Islamic faith. And that a lot of them then were Arab, but you see, you have to be careful because the Arab here, the application of it was very discriminatory because it was more Islamic, and then that it is Arabized. I have to be very careful here.
This would later lead to forced Arabization and Islamization of Southerners, most of whom are Christians and believers of their traditional modes of worship. The mission here was to end the so-called kafir culture, which is politically driven.
Of course, kafir is somebody who is destined to hell. He already has a ticket of going to hell, Jahannam, in his pocket. Yeah, you know, such a kind of radical approach to politics is what has been the case of a number of countries, particularly in the north of Africa. And Al-Bashir falls within that purview, and you always find that behind some of these Islamic strongmen, there are strong religious leaders who are advancing that cause.
it was a very centralized, Khartoum-based government. And that perhaps is explaining why we have issues in Darfur, we have issues in Blue Nile, we have issues in South, in what we call South Kordofan. Now, the problem was that the way the government, the way the structures, the system was done, it was very Khartoum-centered. And that anybody outside that centralized, Khartoum-dominated Islamist issue then was kind of seen as a foreigner, or rather it wasn't easy to penetrate and to be accepted.
Causes of violence in this continent have nothing to do with the contemporary Africa. They are steeped in our history and the configuration and reconfiguration of our identities as a people.
I have witnessed bomb raids, I've seen air raids, I've seen, clashes, and I've seen deaths, many, and tragic as it were. And I have seen children, markets being bombed by, Sudanese Air Force jets. And I have seen bridges blown up. I have seen prisoners, or rather liberated people who've been taken away from the front. So in kind of the emotional, or what I saw, perhaps I have one experience, at least one or two. And one was the bombing in 1997 and also 1996, the bombing of what we'd call now Yei Market.
War and peace are two contrasting occurrences whose impacts can only be felt by those who live them, ones that can only be outlived by time and patience. In 1989, a bloodless coup led by Colonel Omar al-Bashir made the new war take a new course. He was then a brigadier in the Sudanese army with support from a radical Islamist cleric called Hassan al-Turabi and other hotheads. Al-Bashir, at the behest of conservative al-Turabi, would later impose Sharia law, leading to a totalitarian regime which saw many non-Arab communities Arabized. Non-complying individuals and communities, especially from the south, were sold to local Arabs as slaves.
It's what we call Turabi for me, and I met him one or twice. Turabi was a religious zealot, supremacist. He is what we call a mad mullah, a Rasputin. If you know Rasputin in Russia. Okay, so he was that. However, being that, he was very popular within the then religious Islamist core in Sudan. All right? And he was an intelligent person, of course, but towards what? Islamization. So as far as Turabi was concerned, everything revolved around Islamization, the dominance of the faith and what have you.
The marginalization of the people in the South was very clear. The lives of those who live in the North was different from those who lived in the South. Education, health, name anything social, they did not have them. It was like a colony of Khartoum.
Some international human rights and humanitarian agencies would be forced to buy off slaves and later set them free in refugee camps. At that, retired Lieutenant General Lazaro Sumbeiwo was in charge of military intelligence. He was already aware of the atrocities being committed by various players with the backing of Khartoum.
The atrocities that were committed were actually not even committed by Khartoum. It was committed by militia. It was committed by militia aligned to the Khartoum government. Again, unfortunately, I would not want to use the word of an ethnic group, but there was groups that were siding with Khartoum. And the atrocities, I never saw it myself as directly, but they were being reported to us that people were killed, put in sacks, and thrown into the river. This is so people were scared. You cannot fight with these people who, if they kill you, they'll still throw you to the river to be eaten by crocodiles.
We were in what we would then call a market, but just behind the market, we were preparing to go to the front, and then just from nowhere, the jets came. 2 of them, and they dropped bombs on a market in Yei. Yei is in central Equatoria. It was part of the liberated area.
SPLA was controlling many parts of the south. These included Equatoria, Bahra al-Ghazal, and the Upper Nile. The rebel army also had parts of Darfur, South Kordofan, and Blue Nile. Yei was also part of the liberated area in Equatoria.
And the kind of deaths I saw within the market, and also just about a kilometer away on the River Yei, a bridge that was also blown up. And the kind of pain you saw, the destruction, the enormity of this, the pain that was inflicted on innocent people, young women, children, and what have you. And then after that, trying to recover, trying to help these people, because we were in a nearby, it was called the Yei Hospital, but that was run then by what we call the Norwegian People's Aid. And we are trying to get. And then, of course, that hospital was bad. To see people running away, getting out of the wards, and trying to save their lives.
Sumbewo describes his first meeting with al-Bashir at the time he had just taken over power in Sudan. After all, Kenya was already playing a big brother and arbitrator role for the warring factions.
He came here, wanted to meet with John Garang. I was a rank of brigadier. He was a brigadier when he overthrew the government. So I don't know. Again, this is something that at that time I was told to escort Bashir. That was the first time I met him. So we went. We flew here with a Kenya Air Force plane to Nakuru. Went to Nakuru State House. I found President Moi was with John Garang. And President Moi told me, no, you have to take care of the president because his colleague doesn't want to meet him. So I was lost how to deal with a president. I was never been an ADC of a president before, so I decided to take him to Lake Nakuru. So we went around in Lake Nakuru. Then the water was still not as much as they are today, blocking all the roads. So we went around and saw the animals and came back. We found lunch has been prepared in State House. We had lunch. And then we slept in Nakuru. lucky enough, Garang was left. He left. So President Moi took them to his farm, showed them a few cows and things, and then the following day we flew back.
Omar Bashir was selfish, extremely, extremely, as a person, at least the person that I saw. And Bashir was so beholden to his religiosity, his ethnicity, in terms of that he is superior in that regard. So within the Sudanese context, he is superior. He was dealing with inferior people.
John Garang was the then leader of Sudan People's Liberation Movement, whose army was the famous SPLA.
I met him in Southern Sudan, and he was a very focused person. He knew what he wanted, and he knew how to do it. Because of the problem that they had, there was a problem in Darfur, there was a problem in Eastern Sudan. So for him, he wanted to use the others to say, we want a new Sudan where there is equality. But in actual fact, I think John Garang all the way wanted to secede, but he didn't want that to come out as clear as that.
He was brilliant. But he had an interesting personality. You could engage Garang. You could engage him. He could engage you. You could see the man behind the facade.
Such was the cold nature of ties between Khartoum and the South. However, al-Bashir, for being snubbed, sought to break SPLA. In August of 1991, a group within SPLA staged a coup against leader John Garang. The man behind this was Dr. Riek Machar, who led his Nuer community out of the original SPLA after his attempts to oust Garang failed. Machar called his outfit SPLA Nasir and would escalate attacks on Garang's wing with the tactic support and arms from President Omar al-Bashir's government.
What I saw for me is in a place called Naldu in western Upper Nile, where the exchange and the uprooting of people from these two different factions fighting was horrible. Horrible in that the deaths were huge, it was indiscriminate. But the only saving grace, if then there is any, is that the weapons that were used, the deaths were as many, but perhaps it's like the hacking, the hacking of innocent children, the hacking of women.
The conflict would culminate in the massacre of over 2,000 members of Garang's Dinka tribe at a place called Bor in November 1991.
He lived on Riverside Road here in Nairobi. So I went to his house, met with him. The first thing was to him, he asked me to give him weapons to fight John Garang. So I told him, no, that's out of the question. I can. He says, but you people have been giving John Garang. So I said, I don't think I know that. I'm not aware of those.
Riek is highly intelligent, highly intelligent. but he's also highly ambitious. He's also highly sly.
That massacre at Bor came at a time when the United Nations coalition's forces, led by US, were battling Saddam Hussein in the Gulf. Saddam had triggered the conflict after invading the neighboring Kuwait. President Omar al-Bashir's government chose to support the then Iraqi leader, creating a rift between it with Washington. It is in the same year that the al-Bashir regime welcomed some suspicious groups, including Al-Qaeda, whose leader Osama bin Laden had been expelled from Saudi Arabia after falling out with the US. With a dire humanitarian crisis in the south of Sudan amid a deadly conflict, leaders from Kenya, Uganda, and Ethiopia stepped in to find a solution. Uganda's Yoweri Museveni had openly been supporting the SPLA. Many Sudanese from the affected region had flocked into Kenya, Ethiopia, and Uganda, with the United Nations struggling to reach trapped civilians enduring falling bombs, rockets, and heavy gunfire.
Have you seen patients running from the theater because the theater has been attacked and the nurses are dead and they are running and they're trying to take cover? It's a very difficult.
The leaders were acting under the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, IGAD, backed by the United Nations. However, Kenya was to be the place and midwife. This initiative saw the signing of the Khartoum Peace Agreement in 1997. The agreement eased freedom of worship, movement, and other rights in the south of Sudan. It also created a structure for a federal government and a devolved system in the region, with structures of revenue sharing. A coordinating council that would see transition in the southern state was also developed. Riek Machar, the man whose fighters had massacred members of the Dinka tribe, was appointed president of the Southern States Coordinating Council. He also took command of the Southern Sudan Defense Force, with the army being independent of Khartoum's army.
He went to Khartoum, and in 1997 he negotiated the Khartoum Agreement, which was a sham. It was an in-house agreement with the Khartoum. It was not witnessed by anybody. I don't think there was anybody who was mediating it. They just made an agreement.
Relationship between religions. We will continue to defend ourselves.
I went and did my master's in international relations in London. Then I came back. I became the commandant, Defense Staff College. I forgot about it all until I was appointed army commander. Is when President Moi comes back to me and says, I want to give you a job and I don't want you to refuse. And I said, I thought it was something that he wanted, either water to be drilled or something. So I said, but that's. He says, no. I know. I'm appointing you on this issue because you are a Christian, and I want an agreement in Sudan within the next 6 months. This was in 2001. So I told him, can I come and see you, Mr. President? He said, no. You wait. You will get a letter. He had made up his mind that I was going to do it. I said, okay, can I be removed as the army commander so that I can do this job, this mediation? He says, no, you will do both.
As the leader of the peace process, Lieutenant General Sumbeyo's first point of call was to seek acceptance from both parties, first through a meeting with al-Bashir in Khartoum.
No, it was a very good conversation. I said, I have been appointed by IGAD as the chief mediator. Would you accept would your government accept me to be the mediator? He said, yes, we'll accept you. We already heard that you have been appointed, and therefore we are ready to go along. Then this is when now where we change tact.
However, it was during the initial stages of dialogue that he realized that words and terms, though almost sounding similar, could be worlds apart in the spirit and meaning to the parties.
We prepared a program of work, and the modalities of how to go about them. And we did a very good meeting in Karen. But 2 words stopped the government signing it. The government wanted a transition period. And the SPLM wanted an interim period. Is it interim period or something like that? And they disagreed completely.
But the meeting in Machakos would prove crucial in the peace process.
I remembered I had met the late President of the United States of America, Jimmy Carter. And Jimmy Carter asked me, how are you negotiating? And then I told him we were using this declaration of principle. He said, no, you develop a single negotiating text because you stand losing the process if you continue with this declaration of principle. So there and then in Machakos, out of all the things that they had said, we prepared a single negotiating text. And then I pulled 2 issues out. The right of self-determination, which favored the Southerners, and the separation of state and religion. And I had 4 people in the room with a few mosquitoes. Make it a little bit difficult for her. So they were asking for tea, they were asking until in the meantime, what they are doing is they are negotiating with their leaders that we have been locked in here and we cannot move. This is what they want. So by about 1 o'clock in the morning, they called me. They said we have agreed.
On the 9th of January 2005, a comprehensive peace agreement, also known as the Naivasha Agreement, was signed between the government of Sudan and Sudan People's Movement in Nairobi. However, it was preceded by its fair share of diplomatic drama.
Naivasha started as a scare because we invited Ali Osman Taha. This was done through the office of the then Minister for Foreign Affairs, Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka. And I invited John Grant. Ali Osman Taha came on time. And Dr. Karang did not turn up for 3 days. We didn't know what to do with Ali Osman Taha. It was the time Kenyans were mourning the death of the late Kijana Omar, the vice president. So we even convinced Ali Osman Taha that he will have to attend the funeral service so that we have a cover.
SPLM leader John Garang was consulting widely. In his fight for independence, he was backed by, among others, Uganda, Ethiopia, Kenya, Eritrea, Cuba, Israel, and elements within Sudan.
But after 3 days, one evening, at 6 o'clock in the evening, John Garang lands in Naivasha. We did not give him a chance. We immediately went into negotiations. And I asked them, is it okay if I left the two of you? He said, yes, we are Sudanese. We will not fight here. We will probably fight at home, but not here. And we gave them one bottle of water and 2 glasses. Now, Ali Osman Taha explains later that he said, if John Garang opens this bottle, pours the water to him and to himself, they will have a solution. And that's exactly what happened.
After days of hard talks and negotiations, a spark of light was no longer hope but a reality.
16 months later, we had the signing of the agreement, but it also took the Security Council of the United Nations to come to Nairobi to push them.
Beyond the United Nations Security Council, America was smarting from the 9/11 attacks that left over 5,000 people dead. Then US President George Bush threatened to include Sudan and the al-Bashir administration on the list of nations that he termed as the axis of evil. Having previously hosted Osama bin Laden, the man blamed for the attack on US and also on Kenya and Tanzania earlier, Bashir caved in, and the Naivasha talks and their outcomes prevailed. And as the then Sudanese Vice President Ali Osman Taha, who was key in the negotiations, appended his signature to the agreement, he also signed away part of his powers. Therein emerged a man who knew how to read the signs of changing times.
I thought, the man was too clever. He knew, we were all suspecting that he knew this was not true, and it was not going to be pushed, until every part of it was implemented. They thought they would have something to hold on to.
The South would be semi-autonomous from the North for 6 years and be followed by a referendum that would determine the independence of the said South. Both sides also agreed to merge armed forces into a 39,000-strong force if the South did not opt for independence in the referendum. They also agreed to divide revenue from oil equally between the state and SPLA during the 6-year transitional period. The parties agreed to split jobs according to varying rations of 70-30 in favor of the southern states. And lastly, the Islamic Sharia law would not be applied in the south, with its application only left to the Southern Autonomous Regions Parliament. After signing of the deal, Sudanese Vice President Taha would later travel to Mombasa by train to cool it off. Between 9th and 15th of January 2001, thousands of people in southern Sudan and across the world thronged into polling booths. It was a referendum whose outcome would determine their future as an independent nation. However, Khartoum just couldn't let go of the South easily.
Of course, they wanted to postpone the referendum. Khartoum wanted to postpone the referendum, and he had convinced some people in the South that they were not ready. And I think Kenya and the other parts of East Africa were sure that they were ready. It is believed that actually Bashir convinced Salva that they could go on for another 6 years without referendum. But the other SPLM officers could not stomach that.
The takeoff point for Bashir was that he couldn't understand, or rather accept or internalize, that people, or the people of South, wanted to be their own masters, wanted to be treated with dignity, with respect, and as human beings.
The result was overwhelming, yet expected, a 99% approval for independence. Locals had their collective voice heard, and a new nation was born.
I attended with President Moy. I attended with President Moy the raising of the flag. I think, they were shambolic. Although Kenyans, at that time, we had put in a lot of Kenyans to organize because these people could not organize themselves. President Kibaki's government had given them a lot of support in human, material, and material.
As the world welcomed its youngest nation, it was a presentation of an end to a bloody civil war that had left over 1 million dead.
I think Moy was right. As a Christian, it wasn't me. It was God who did it. And so I don't attribute it to myself. I attribute it to God's doing. And that's it. So I may have been elected as a human being, but it wasn't me who did it. Without God, I don't think we would be where we are.
Lieutenant General Sumbeyo did was to, he came across, he was an honest broker. That was very, very important. An honest broker to who? To peace.
A new nation had been born in the south of Sudan, South Sudan, a nation that is still molding itself while muddling in the mud as it writes its own history, despite the challenges. A nation whose culture lies in the hearts, souls, and bodies of its people, who are diverse yet one. Kenya did not end its efforts at mediation. The initial senior civil servants for the newborn nation were also trained at the Kenya School of Government. Former and the current diplomats were also trained here in Kenya. Unfortunately, South Sudan has been through a vicious conflict that lasted between 2013 and 2020, making it its freedom short-lived for her people.
It is sad. Sad that South Sudan first misused its resources, didn't use them on the people. It is the elite, the fallout of the freedom fighters, those who fought, and now it's other people who are enjoying the fruits of independence. I think that's very sad.
But is it a disappointment? Yes, it is. Is it painful? Yes. Is it a betrayal? Yes. Should they be held accountable? Yes. Should then the African government, the African people, hold them to account? Yes. Should we learn from them? Yes. What?
As memories of the past offer comfort and joy, they also connect the present dark moments for South Sudan, while providing possible solutions. Reminiscences that confirm that indeed a birth happened in the south of Sudan. Birth of a nation, South Sudan.
Oh God, we praise and glorify you for your grace in South Sudan.